tonight? Pardon me? Whatever I get done tonight. Glad you stayed. Huh? Goes to whatever I finish at 8:20. I will probably won't finish the entire chapter, but I will do my best. Whatever I cover, what's going on. Okay, when you look at these rocks, what do you see? How do you think the holes were formed? Woodpeckers. Well, it sure didn't rain sideways, right? Although in South Florida it rains sideways, so I shouldn't say that. How do you think why do you think they look like Swiss cheese? Animals a long time ago. It is erosion. It is a type of weathering. It's because there's areas in the rock that are weaker than other areas. So there's areas where you can find pits just from the wind and the humidity and the moisture. Okay? Here's the problem. There's a lot of areas like Mesa Verde in the United States that's made from sandstone. When it rains on this, it starts melting away. This is a dry desert. They're not used to a lot of rain. It starts disappearing. If you look at the Parthenon, starting to weather away, disappear. Now this is accelerated by what's in the air. Because when you have the release of sulfur oxides that mix with water in the air, you create sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid eats it away. Okay? I would know this. How many components of the Earth's system are in the soil? First of all, what's the 4 components of the Earth system? Excellent. All 4 are in the rocks. Very good. So when I talk about rock and I talk about soil, I'm talking about everything that you see around the planet. Because if I pick up a handful of dirt outside, in that dirt, I'm going to have spaces of air. I'm going to have traces of water. I'm going to have something living, moving around, some kind of worm, some kind of nematode, some kind of ant, some kind of bug, some kind of bacteria, all in that dirt. And I'm going to have pieces of rocks that have broken down from other rocks. So they're all 4 there. Okay? There's regolith, which is called a rock ornamental fabric. I would know that. Hydrosphere, anytime you see the prefix hydro, is the water. Atmos, anytime you see the prefix atmos, you think of atoms or air. Because when they originally started this, they thought air was atoms. And then organic material is anything that was alive or living. We're all carbon-based. All you guys that are Star Trek fans. Anybody ever seen Star Trek? Good. You guys are smart. The rest of you, do you know that the original Star Trek series was pretty accurate scientifically? It's one of the few television series I can watch and not explain what's wrong. And actually enjoy it. That and the Big Bang Theory. They get most of everything. Big Bang's only screwed up once or twice. But they get most of their science right. They must have a PhD program or something. Although sometimes Sheldon mispronounces words. It's kind of fun. Would you love to watch something like that with me? No, my boyfriend hates it. Because he says he can't enjoy it because I explained to him why it's not possible. He likes to watch all those killer flicks where, the end of the world and, something crashes and, Tom Selleck and a little fanny girl that ran around. And I said, that's not possible. That's physics. That doesn't work like that. It's like, Avatar almost killed me. That was just so wrong. Because those trees are actually Christmas tree worms that live in the ocean. Okay? They are not trees that live on land. They so got that wrong. Completely wrong. We call them Christmas tree worms. I can give you the genus and species, but it's commonly called Christmas tree worms. When you dive underneath the water, they're out like that. say it's sonic wave, they hide back inside. And they look just, Avatar literally got it. I want to hear Finding Nemo or SpongeBob SquarePants. Okay. Here's the problem. Soil forms very slowly by weathering. We use it very fast. Humans have done more to degrade soil in my lifetime than everything combined for the last million years. We've done it in 50 years. Okay? So, realize that this is unloading, not uploading. Yes, ma'am.
With Dust Bowl, that was human made.
Yep, we're going to go through that. Unloading. So, when you have water, you have wind, you have air, you have something that removes a top layer of the dirt that's holding everything down in place. Once you move it off the top, then it pops up. Now, not so much in South Florida, because we're kind of lucky. We only have about 3 feet of dirt underneath our feet. And then you hit limestone. There's not a lot of rock underneath us. There's a lot of limestone, but that's about it. When you go up into the northern states, that's different. Sometimes you have 500, 600 feet of dirt underneath you. Okay? That dirt compacts, it stretches. Depending on the time of the year, it expands or it collapses. And especially roads up north, a huge problem with this on the secondary roads, is during the winter it freezes. So it compacts and it gets really tight and small together, the asphalt. During the summer it expands and it actually kind of melts and spreads out. When it freezes back, if it lifts up, the bottom dirt will actually come up underneath it and create little mounds, little hills. I know we don't have hills in South Florida, but they have hills up north. And those little hills are called unloading. Okay? It's a natural process. Happens all the time. Wedging is the exact opposite. When you have a little crack in the ground and water gets into it, what happens to water when it freezes? It expands. Then it melts the next day in the sun. Then it freezes the next night and expands again. Then it melts the next day in the sun. Then it freezes the next night and expands again. They have a terrible time up north with road maintenance because every little crack that gets water in it that freezes at night and melts during the day continuously breaks apart and makes bigger all those cracks all through the fall and through the spring. Not too bad during the winter because it stays frozen all the time. Another scary phenomenon they have up north that you don't have down here, and if you ever try to drive up north and in freezing rain, don't do it. Because the asphalt gets cold faster than the air. When the cool water from the rain hits the asphalt, it creates a thin sheet of ice. It's called black ice. Your car doesn't do well on black ice. If you want to be a figure skater in a car, that's the way to do it. Because your car will actually slide all over that ice. So have an ice skate, ice rink. Okay? Because of the difference in temperature between the air and between the asphalt. Gives you black ice. So understand unloading. Please don't write uploading on test. It's got nothing to do with uploading anything to the computer. You get feeling I've heard that one before. Understand wedging. Okay, potholes. So if you look at this beautiful mountain and you notice that down here is all the little pieces of sediment that have broken down as the mountain is broken down, this is why. If I take this one piece of rock and I magnify it so I can see what happens, the water gets in, the frost gets in, and it freezes and it expands. The sun comes out and it melts, fills up more, and it freezes at night and expands. That's called frost wedging. Over thousands of years, that's how you break down a mountain to nothing but a hill. All this sand at the bottom is basically this mountain above it breaking apart because of this frost wedging. Okay, let's talk about So when you have saltwater spray, if you're near the edge of the ocean, and the saltwater sprays on top of a rock, and the salt gets into each of the little bitty cracks and crevices, and then it dries, you can actually see the salt crystals, right? And then it sprays the next day and the salt melts again, and then it dries and the salt forms new crystals, back and forth. The wet saline water gets inside of the rock, into all the little cracks and crevices. And when it dries, it kind of forces the rock open just a little bit every time it dries. Anywhere there is a fracture, a crack, or a pit in the rock, the salt forming in that area will make it bigger and bigger and bigger day after day after day. The greater the size of the pits and the more the pits, the more surface area, the more places that the salt water can land on and form salt crystals. So honeycombing has to do with salt landing on bigger and bigger areas of the rock, breaking it apart. That's all physical weathering. Important concept to know. Yes, ma'am.
Professor, can a hole in the ground get bigger and bigger by being just like that?
Yep,
Yeah.
sure can. And especially in South Florida. Because in South Florida, because we live on limestone, it's kind of like Swiss cheese. And when it rains, the rain mixes with sulfur in the atmosphere and it creates a very weak acid. Okay? Kind of think of like hydrogen peroxide. It's not hydrogen peroxide, but think like that. As it goes through the dirt and gets into the limestone, it starts etching out and making those holes in the limestone a little bit bigger. And then one day, the weight of the dirt and whatever's on top of that hole is a little too heavy, and that's how you get a sinkhole. That's the progression of a sinkhole. So it can happen to this building. It can happen anywhere in South Florida at any time. Okay, here's a close-up picture of it. All right, 3 important chemical weathering techniques. So this was physical weathering. Physical weathering is honeycomb. Chemical weathering has 3 different kinds. Okay. Anybody see the Good Night in the Garden, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil? Maybe you guys watch movies. Old movies. Okay, never mind. Dissolution. So, the first one was physical. The honeycomb weathering is physical. These are all going to be chemicals. So I got 3 chemicals. I got dissolution, dissolving, hydrolysis, which has to do with water, the hydrogen ions reacting, and then I have oxidation, which is like rust on your glass. So when you go to tombstones in a really, really old graveyard, you ever notice that it's kind of got little holes and cracks and pits and funny things growing in it, and it's discolored? Kind of strange. What happens is tombstone is made from a type of cement, which is kind of like limestone in a way. Just like statues are, just like the Parthenon in Greece is, like the Washington Monument. All of those are made from different grades of rock. If you pour a little bit of acid on them every day, day after day, year after year, you start to eat away at the areas that are the weakest. So for example, if you're one of those people that like to suck on lemons, the lemon wedges